Hello everyone, welcome back to another Derail Valley episode. This is a tutorial for the DH4. Now this locomotive has won the community vote with 3 votes for the DH4 and 1 vote for the DE6. So today we're going to be taking a look at the DH4. The next tutorial will consist of the DE6. The last one will likely be the SO60 because I was the last in the vote. So I don't think I have to do a DE2 tutorial just because it's generally the same principles as the DE6, so I'll probably just keep those ones relatively in the same category. But today we're going to be taking a look at the DH4. Now this locomotive, I know the basic mechanics on how it works, but I don't know the in-depth, but I will learn it if you guys want to see an in-depth sort of explanation on how the diesel hydraulic mechanisms work. But as far as I know, there's basically your main motor that goes to some hydraulic fluid tubing, and you have your engine spinning a turbine that spins the fluid around, which turns the wheels. That's my basic understanding. I could be a little bit inaccurate there, so don't, if anybody has a more in-depth knowledge on how that actually works, feel free to comment, because I would like to know that. So, when you're coming in here, you have your breaker panel on the back. You got your starter and your electrics, you want both of those on. You hold that till it starts. And just my personal preference, I turn off the starter breaker once I'm fully started on the locomotive. Now we'll disengage this handbrake, turn on the cab light, and I'll turn on the frontal lights, and I'll turn on the red headlights on the back. Right, so obviously you got your starter button, which is what we've just pressed. You got your fuel cut off for when you're stopped and you don't want to run the train anymore. I just want to give a little bit of advice. Every time you start the locomotive, that's about, I think it's around $500 to $1,000 in damage. So when you can, keep the engine running. Because if you're going to run it still afterwards, it's best just to keep it running, because your idling costs are way lower than your starting costs. Alright, so we got your reverser. This is forward, neutral, reverse. You got your throttle, which goes backwards for full power, and then you got the idling position where it's at right now. You got your dynamic brake, which basically, it's a dynamic brake. And I'll go a little bit more in depth on how that works once we're going down a hill. You got your horn. And then you got your train brake, which is pretty much, it's self-lapping, just like the DE2, the DE6. Basically those general principles. If you know how to operate those, then you should know how to operate that. And then you got your independent brake as usual. You got your handbrake, which I did disengage. You got your doors, obviously. And you got your bell here. Now, I hope that's not too much information all streamed in at once. I do whack my camera around a bit much, I noticed, so if anything's confusing that you don't understand, just leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to explain it again to you. So I'm gonna just zoom in onto these. So you got your first brake gauge. Hold on, let me just go down to here. You got your first one, which is this one right here. That red needle right there, that signifies the pressure being put onto the brakes, which is kind of how every locomotive has. And then you got the brake pipe pressure, which is how much air you got in your brake pipes. So as this goes down, this will go up. And then you got your main reservoir, which is the tank of air on each locomotive and each rail car. It only displays the amount for your current locomotive, I believe, but just assume that every single locomotive has one of these, and rail car as well. You got your temperature gauge. I do notice that you can run it pretty hot, but I usually just kick one notch down from the maximum throttle when I'm hauling heavy, because you can still do quite a bit of weight even without that extra notch of power. Then you got your tachometer, which is basically RPMs. Now this is kind of where the turbine in the fluid hoses kind of comes into play. You got your engine RPM, which will go up, and then you got your turbine RPM, which basically, as your sort of RPMs go up for your engine, the turbine will come up as well to try to match it. Now, if you're hauling heavy up a hill, that red needle will never go as high as what your white needle will be. But when you're going down a hill or you're sort of just coasting down or something, it usually will try to come to generally the same amount, but don't be worried if the red one is not exactly on that. You got your oil, which displays your oil level. That's just for maintenance. Same thing with fuel, and same thing with sand. I hope that explains some stuff. But I've lined up some jobs here. We got a 750-ton diesel and gasoline, which is kind of what we did with the DM3. And then we also have a nitrogen load, so hopefully these will go to the same tracks, but it will be around 856 tons. That should be the exact number. So we're going to do this load. So we got ourselves in forward. Now let's bring us out of the wheelhouse right here. Or the roundhouse, I should say. And like I said, guys, if you want to see a more in-depth tutorial on how the mechanics works, just leave a comment and let me know, because I can definitely do that for you guys. I'll have to research the topic beforehand, but I'm sure I can deliver on that. Right, so we're just picking up from the E-yard because both consists are in the E-yard, so that should be pretty good for us. And another thing to keep in mind is that the diesel hydraulic kind of works generally in the same way as the DM3, except it's sort of automatic. So you don't gotta worry about shifting, but it kinda, in principle, works almost the same way. Not exactly the same, but it's similar in a few aspects. Right, so we should be lined up. We should be past the switch. Now, you guys will probably notice that I'd go pretty aggressive on the power just to begin off with, just so I can get rolling, but as I get up to speed, I usually bring it back a notch from the full power. We're going to reverse back and connect this one first, the nitrogen load, because I like to have the high value stuff on the very end of the train, so provided if they do go to different tracks in the end, at least I have the high value one off first, and then I can go to the secondary job, which isn't worth as much, last, just in case I'm running low on the time bonus. Now this is my realistic save. This is not part of the career series. This is a completely separate save meant for educating people on tutorials and also to play on my own time. I already got myself lined in correctly, as far as I know, so. And the great thing about this locomotive is it can actually be paired with the locomotive remote, so it is quite a good heavy-duty shunter. So if you're shunting with high amounts of weight, this is actually quite the perfect locomotive for that kind of job. So let's actually just pair this up right now. Hop out of the cab. And as you can see, I'm just making use of this locomotive remote because that is one thing with the DH4 is it's great for this kind of application. And I safely rate this thing up to 850 tons. It is quite a good locomotive. I think two of them combined could probably safely do 1,500 tons, maybe 1,600 if you're really striving for greatness. It is very good for a locomotive. Alright, we're just gonna ride on the back here because, you know, why not? Toot toots. And we'll reverse up to our diesel and gasoline load. If you guys are enjoying the video so far, make sure to drop a like and maybe share with your friends. That definitely will help me out a lot. Now, I do have to admit that the DH4 definitely has a good sound design for... Out of all the diesel locomotives, I think the DH4 has the best sound design. Not my favorite locomotive. I think the DM3 definitely still is my favorite diesel locomotive. But for sound design, I think the DH4 definitely wins in that department. Alright, let's connect this last load up. Alright, let's try not to smack into these too hard. A good sort of range to smack into the cars is less than 10 kilometers an hour. So as long as you don't smack into them that difficult or that hard, you should be fine. See, that might have sounded like it was a hard hit, but that's kind of normal. That's kind of normal railway operations. Let's get this thing attached here. And damage should still be 0. Yep. And we're ready to get rocking and rolling. Alright, put this right here. And time to go redeem the jobs now. Alright, so now, ideally, these will both go onto the same tracks when we get to the food factory, but I guess we're gonna have to see here. So this one's going to D2I. I highly doubt this one's going to the same one. C4I. Alright. So that is actually good that we decided to put those diesel and gasoline tankers on the back, because we can just pull into C4I and get those unloaded first. Alright, now we're ready to get going. Let's get this tutorial on and show the limits of this locomotive. We're fully released on our brakes. Let's get our lights in the right orientation. Since we are not a single unit without any rail cars, we don't need these red lights on anymore. Right, so as I said, I usually go pretty aggressive on the throttle to start off with. I go as much as I can without wheel slipping. As you can see, our engine RPMs are coming up, and also the turbine RPM very slowly in comparison, but it is coming up. Alright, so we're fully in the corner now with our throttle, which is fine. As long as we don't, like, get it to shut off with the safety, we should be fine. It'll climb up. We're gonna let it go into the red just a little bit. Then once we get up to 40, we will back off on our throttle. So both of our jobs are activated, so we are good to go. So this tutorial is probably likely being recorded before episode 3 of the career series, but it's probably gonna be released after the 3rd one. And I'm definitely gonna put this on a premiere likely, so. And this time I'll make sure that the premiere gets to HD before I release it. So as you can see, we're getting a bit hot here. That's fine. As long as we don't go too hot, we should be fine. Now we should be able to cut down on one throttle notch here. And this thing does keep a pretty stable temperature as long as you keep it one notch below the maximum. You can actually put it into maximum if you need that extra bit of power. I don't think your engine gets more wear on it if it does go into the red. I think it's just sort of a bit iffy if you are in the red. So as you can see, we're a bit more than 40 right now, so we're just gonna back off a little bit on the throttle just to let it cool down a little bit. And then once we actually get onto the hill, we should probably get it more or less maximum throttle, if not one notch below. That's usually how I run it. You can see now we're pretty much at a good temperature, so we'll just get her to come up to more or less the max throttle. If you need that extra bit of juice, then you can put down max, but I usually just try to keep it down below where it needs to be. So this climb shouldn't be too difficult for this locomotive. The only thing of worry is probably this 2.5% or whatever it is. I think it's around 2.5% out of the initial climb of the harbor, but once you're past that, then you got no worries. So we'll get probably down to sub 20 kilometers an hour, but that's perfectly fine. And there are some cases where your locomotive will overheat in the 80% throttle position, but that's normal as well. So we got a 40, we don't gotta worry about our speed because we're gonna have a relatively slow climb up this hill. You can see the train is still behind us, obviously. So this is kind of like the area where we stalled out on the grade with the DM3, but it's really nothing to worry about because with the DH4 it's kind of much easier to get up these hills. And with the DM3 it's a bit iffy because you're going really slow and you gotta really manage your sand with the DM3, but with this one it's not that much of an issue. You can see we're getting relatively slow, but we should be able to make it up. So we're borderline 800 and, what was it, 856 tons. So it is quite a heavy load, but it's really nothing this thing can't handle. So you can see we do get relatively slow. We're getting wheel slip, so we'll put down some sand. So you see we're operating really hot, but as long as we don't get past maybe like that 115 mark, we should be fine. And you see we're on the flat section, so it should become pretty much, it should become better. So once it starts getting a little bit closer to that 115, which is pretty much now, we'll back off one notch and see if that goes down. You can see it does go down there. So it is pretty much on its limits now, but, you know, it is possible. And now it's a little bit less now, so we'll just kick on a little bit more throttle just to get that speed up a little bit more. And in my opinion, this is what is really fun about the DH4, is you can do a lot of weight. You just have to know how to you gotta know your limits, you know? You can't do too much, but you can't do too little. Because too little, it's kind of just like, alright, this is too easy, but if you put it on its limits, then It's very fun. So as you can see, we're speeding up now. This second part of the climb shouldn't be that much of an issue. So as you can see, we are slowly cooling off there. Once you start gaining speed, then a little bit of compound cooling mechanics start happening, where the faster you go, the better cooling you got. But as I said, this second part of the climb shouldn't be too difficult because it's nowhere near the grade out of the harbor initially, so it should be possible. So, yeah, I guess 850 tons is kind of maximum that you can take. I wouldn't try going 900. I think that'd be overachieving and you might stall on the grade. At those kind of weights, just start considering taking another DH4. I would not trust myself to take a DE6 with this load. I feel like the DE6 would blow its traction motors with this kind of weight. The DE6 is really not a good locomotive. Though the developers have confirmed on the thread I made about the DE6, they have confirmed that they are going to tweak the two diesel-electric locomotives, which is the DE2 and the DE6, in the future down the road. So I am glad about that. Hopefully they will reduce the overheating in the DE6. I hope that we can maintain maximum throttle at around 20 to 25 kilometers an hour at least, because that's what would be actually realistic. So as you can see, we're almost done the climb. This is kind of where it levels off at that sign, and we'll be able to start hauling ass out of here. I hope you guys find this tutorial informative, and as well as my other tutorials. I obviously still have the D6 to do and the SO60, but I feel like the SO60 will more or less be kind of a shorter tutorial because, you know, I might not take it out on a road haul, kind of like, you know, what we usually are doing with most of the locomotives, because it is technically a steam shunter. So I might do a shunting job on the tutorial video, and also because I already did the S282 as well. The S282 kind of is generally the same idea as the SO60, so. So as you can see, temperature is not too bad. As long as you can keep it down below that 115 mark where you get into dangerous territory, you'll be fine. So that just means you don't have to bring it back from the throttle as soon as it starts going into the red. You can sustain in the red for as long as you want. I don't think it increases your maintenance costs. I think it only increases your maintenance cost if it shuts down by itself from the overheating, which is something that I'm pretty sure it still does, but I can't remember. So we're pretty much done the climb now. Now we should start speeding up a little bit. And this is why I like this locomotive sound design, is because your RPMs are so high at low speeds. It's just, I love it. It's such a good experience. For the diesel locomotives, oh, I did not mean to do that. For the diesel locomotives, I'd say my favorite is probably DM3, then after that one's probably the DH4, then after that is probably the DE6, and then DE2. But then the steam, I feel like the steam locomotives and diesel locomotives are kind of on their own separate leagues. I don't like to combine the lists of which one's my favorite, because they're kind of too different to really rank in the same list. So obviously the S282's my favorite steam locomotive, and then the SO60 is kind of second favorite. Which they're both good. I'm not saying the SO60 is bad. It is a good little steamer. So our temperature has come down a little bit. I'm just going to pump the throttle because, you know, I don't really care if I'm in the red zone. As long as I don't get too terribly high, I should be fine. And these tutorials, you may be thinking, like, why would you normally want to take out this kind of weight with this locomotive, or with the locomotives you showcase? For me, it's just sort of like more or less a proof of concept, where this tutorial is meant to show you what the limits are of the locomotive, so you don't have to go out and find it yourself. Obviously, I don't recommend taking this much weight up normally, because if you make a mistake, you're probably going to have to retry the hill. But it's more or less just a proof of concept. Can you get up the hill with this kind of weight with the right momentum? And as we found out today, yes you can. And, you know, we still have a major climb because we actually have to go up to the food factory, which will be coming out through here, taking a left here, and this is a nice big climb. I don't think it's as much of a climb as the harbor climb, but, you know, it is a climb regardless, so... We're just trying to get as much speed as we can, just maintain that momentum. And as I said, it doesn't really matter if we operate in the red temperature. I've never really had problems with running it in the red. It doesn't seem to increase engine maintenance. As long as you don't operate it like till where it goes kaput, you know. Should be fine. And that's where the fun in the game to me is hauling as heavy as you possibly can and learning the limits of the game. That's where the real fun of the game is, in my opinion. If you're just playing it safe and not taking up as much as you possibly can, then it's kind of just mundane and boring, and you know, but you could be doing a lot more with the locomotives and pushing them to their limits. So that's kind of the way I look at the game. I think it's quite a fun play style. Obviously, everybody has their own play style. Some people don't like to play with the money aspect of the game. Personally, I love having a challenge with your money. Obviously, once you're in the end game, Derail Valley, the money doesn't really become an issue. But early game, it is actually quite fun. Once you get every single license, money is just kind of just a trivial thing. You don't really have to worry about it. This thing operates really high RPM, so it's actually not very surprising why it overheats on the highest notch of power. So this is kind of like a mild climb for this tunnel, but it's nothing that this engine can't handle. I hope the audio is still good with the DH4, because it is a louder diesel locomotive than the others. But I noticed that the steam locomotive wasn't too loud on the part 2 of the career series, just because, you know, the steam locomotives are kind of the loudest locomotives in the game, so if that's not loud, this is probably not that loud either. And if you guys want my gameplay to be louder, if you think it's too quiet, I can definitely turn it up by a tiny little bit. Now this is pretty much where we start speeding up drastically. can see the RPMs get near 1800 when we're at the maximum throttle notch. And we're gonna start to speed up to 70 kilometers an hour. Now this is the point where we start really going. Obviously the D6 is gonna be next on the tutorial list, and I think I might try to take, like, I wouldn't trust myself taking up this weight, but I might try it just to see what happens, and then if it doesn't work, then I'd do a retake or something. Like, I'd still put it in the video, but it'd be like a failed attempt, obviously. Now, before we get to the hill and get our dynamic brake on, I kind of want to generally explain how it works. Now, I'm not going to go into like the advanced, but I'm just going to basically put it in the simplest terms. So, you know, you got your fluid hosing that spins the wheels, but the dynamic brake alters that it alters it in a way that adds more friction to the fluid in there, which slows down the locomotive. So that's how I understand it. It's not, and it generates a lot of heat too. So, you know, once you get past like 50 kilometers an hour, it's going to be generating way too much heat to use effectively. So you need to be subpar, or you need to be sub 50 kilometers an hour if you want to make sure you can maintain that sort of dynamic braking functionality, because above that speed threshold, your engine will overheat in like 10 seconds. I'm not even joking you. It becomes useless after that speed. So we're trying to strive for 70 kilometers an hour. You know, we gotta get up to those speeds. Wanna get this load on time. We're actually gonna back off a little bit on the throttle just to get our temps down into the yellow. We probably don't really need that much throttle anyways. So, on the day of recording, oh yeah, I do have my phone here. The day of recording is Tuesday, August 8th. This is probably going to come out tomorrow on the 9th, if not the 10th. We'll see. I might have a dual upload on the 9th with the career series and this tutorial as well, probably. So if you guys see two videos, don't be surprised. Alright, we're just gonna cut throttle completely because we're coming up to a 60 zone anyway, so just apply a little bit of brakes here. As you saw in the career series, if you watch that, you can actually go through this junction at 65-ish, so we're not even gonna try to go down to 60 strictly. Now, we do have a very dangerous load on us, so if stuff were to go wrong, it would be very, very bad. But I have pretty big confidence that we won't derail. So we're just gonna chill out on the throttle. We're gonna have to use our dynamic brake anyway, so let's just slow down to... We'll slow down past 60 kilometers an hour and we'll start applying gentle dynamic braking here. You can see our temperature is rising. It generates a lot of heat, guys. I'm not joking with you when I say that. Now, theoretically, we don't have to slow down too much on this downhill because we're not taking the left at the Y, but I like to be careful anyways. So we're going maximum dynamic brakes. See, we're in the yellow now. So as long as we maintain our speed at 50, I think you can go up to 60, but it starts getting iffy then with the temperature. But just try to kind of keep it around the 50 to 60 mark. Or if the speed limit is lower, obviously you want to apply a little bit of train brake. I just want to maintain my speed. I don't want to go above 60 until I'm mostly done with the descent. Because the line that we are going on is pretty fast for a speed limit, so we don't have to worry too much about our speed until we get onto the second climb up to the food factory. Until then, we'll probably be fine. You see, we're in the red now. We're just gonna chill out. We ain't gonna stress about it. We'll take down one notch of it because, like I said before, we're not worrying too much about our speed. And now I'm just going to completely disengage it. We're just going to coast down. Even if we go to 70 kilometers an hour, that's fine. Hell, we could even do 80 if we wanted to. This is a very fast section of track. So now it's light out, so we don't really need much of the lights in here. So the switches at the steel mill seem to be fine. Just apply a little bit of train brake just to be safe. So we're all good now. Just maintain our speed through here. Now we're pretty much going to be through that curve, that little funky curve through the steel mill, and we should be able to maintain our speed now. So as you can see, our turbine RPM is actually higher than our engine RPM. That's just because we're coasting. So that's kind of like the one little weird area where it actually goes higher than the engine RPMs is when you're coasting at high speeds. Here, I'm going to give you a little demonstration. Look at that temperature needle when we're applying maximum dynamic brakes. Even with the fan on, it goes on super high. Though this is a 70 zone, so we don't actually really have to worry about speed too much through here. Since it's raining, we'll turn on the high beams. I didn't really expect it to get super rainy. Hopefully we will be able to get up the second hill anyways, even though it is raining. Apply a little bit of train brake there. Now we're slowing down a little bit. Turn off the train brake because we're pretty much on flat ground now. We'll apply full power. Almost full power. You know, we can apply full power for now. You see, this is kind of weird volumetric lighting because of the fog. If that gets too if that gets too much for you, you can always go to low beam. About 100 km/h speed limit. Though with this locomotive, you don't really get up to those speeds. Really, with any locomotive, you don't really get up to those speeds anymore since overhauled. Only if you're running light do you really get up to those speeds. But we're hauling real heavy today. So the C yard is gonna be coming in from the northeast, so the C yard's gonna be directly ahead of us, so we just want to go straight. And then the C yard, so we're coming in from northeast. C4I is gonna be on the left. We're pretty much at the right speeds that we want to be at. Use my mouse mode. Just coast a little bit, save on fuel. I'll just turn it down to low beam, just so it doesn't have that sort of foggy effect. So, it's likely that we're going to have to use sand up the hill, but that's fine, we have plenty of sand to work with anyways, so. We're going to try to get up to 65 kilometers an hour on the hill, just to make sure we have a lot of momentum up there. I'm pretty sure it does go to 2% in some areas, but it shouldn't be anything that this locomotive can't handle, even in the rain. I think this locomotive still has pretty decent traction, even in the rain. But I guess we'll see how we do. It's nothing like the harbor grade, that's for sure. Now that one is definitely switched the right way. Just gonna cut throttle there. So we have a 60 zone. So I can't remember, I think the switch is, yeah, we need to switch that one up there. Cool. Because I did take my diesel tank cars from that industry before I did any of my tutorials, so it is a 70 zone to the left. Not through the switch, I don't believe, but you know, we can go a little bit faster than it says, so. And we're just gonna try to keep as much momentum as we can, like I said. Just get our wipers on. I don't think we need them that fast, but... And actually, I'm going to try to conserve my heat here for a little bit. I'm just going to try to keep the heat generation minimal in case we need that extra little bit of power. So we don't want to go too fast, but we don't want to lose our momentum. So as long as we can carry most of our momentum up this hill, I think we should be fine. Now speed shouldn't be an issue. Once we start hitting the 30 zone, I probably will start putting on some sand just preemptively, just to make sure we don't start slipping all of a sudden. I'm just going to give it a little bit of extra power. We'll run it in the red for a little bit. I'm just going to start putting a little bit of sand down, just preemptively, just to make sure we don't slip. Because once you start slipping, then you'll be losing a lot of momentum real fast, and that's the last thing we need right now. Even though I'm pretty sure we will get up the hill perfectly fine, it's just sort of a preventative measure. We'll just put those wipers on max speed now. Now we're pretty much up the hill anyways, so. You can see we're in the red, but that's fine. As long as we don't let it go too high. We're fine if it stays in there for a little bit. Alright, I'll start backing off on it one notch here. And this is pretty much the end of the climb, so we have gone up it successfully without slipping. And once we get past the switch, it'll be a downhill anyway, so we won't need to use our sand after that. And that switch is the wrong way, so we want to switch that. And it's a 30 zone anyway, so we're actually at a pretty decent speed for that anyways. See, we're slipping a little bit. Just put down the rest of our sand. And we made it up the hill. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, if you put your mind to it, this locomotive can haul pretty heavily. That's something this thing is actually really capable with. And I might actually try one day on my sandbox save to take it up the coal mine line with 880 tons. I think that would be quite a fun endeavor to do and try. So we're pretty much up the hill. We got some downwards momentum anyway, so we'll just cut the throttle, turn off the sand, and we'll get ready on our dynamic braking. Might slow down a little bit more depending on how much train is still on the uphill from over there, which I'm pretty sure is mostly done with anyways, so we'll start getting on our dynamic brake. We may as well just go maximum. I'm going to put some sand down because in the rain, the dynamic brake does tend to act a little bit funky and does some wheel slipping action, so we'll just be a little bit careful with that. We're just going to try to keep a 30 km/h speed. As long as we can keep that kind of speed, we should be fine. Let's see what happens if we turn this off. Seems like we're mostly fine. We might go without it just until we start slipping. Give a little toot-toot. We are slowing down a little bit more, so we'll just take off a little bit of our train brake. Since we're speeding up a little bit more, so we'll put on another notch of train brake just to make sure we don't go too fast. We want to really control this descent. As you see, we got a 30 zone up there, so we don't want to really exceed that. And if you need, you can always put on a little bit extra of your independent brake just to kind of minimize that speed. When you're using all these braking methods in conjunction with each other and just trying to micromanage, it actually works out really good. So as you can see, the rain is actually seeming to pick up, so it's a good thing we got up the hill when we did, because it might have actually been impossible, possibly, depending on how slippery the rails were. But it seems like it's actually pretty good now, so it's getting... The weather looks like it's deteriorating. It might actually result in a storm, possibly. As you can see, our speed is actually pretty stable right now. We are maintaining quite a decent speed here. We're pretty much Gonna enter the yard here in a couple seconds. We gotta just make sure we got us lined up for the right track. See, we're speeding up a little bit. We'll just make sure that's minimized a little bit. We're going the right way. We just gotta make sure we're in for C4I, which is that one. Now we're lined in. So now we're pretty much down the hill. We don't need our dynamic brakes anymore. We can just chill out on that, let it kind of coast to a stop. We'll just disengage all of our brakes until we're fully in the siding. And since we got our locomotive remote, we're actually just going to jump out of the cab here. We're just going to go to the end of the train with our locomotive remote and just brake from the back of the train once it passes the right area. There we go. Now we're on the back of it. Alright, let's apply a little bit of train brake. Not too much, just enough to get us slowed down a little bit. And it looks like this is a pretty successful run here. We'll stop it right there. Apply that brake, and we shall go redeem this job. Cool. We're doing perfectly fine on our job timer. 168 grand. That's pretty good. Let's go detach. Let's actually take our EOT lantern off first, and then we will go detach this cut of cars from the main consist. Now, we are looking at the D yard, which I believe is on the other side of the industries here. You can see this would have been kind of a little bit funky to do all this whack-a-mole, you know, going back and forth with if this was on the front, then it would be kind of way too complicated. So that's kind of what my ideology is just making sure you put your consist on correctly so you can minimize the amount of work needs to be done. Alright, so now we're back in the cab here. We got just the few cars on us now. Just put on a little bit of sand here, just preemptively. And we shall just jump on the back here. Got our locomotive remote. This locomotive remote is definitely a pretty good investment if you're playing this game, especially if you're playing with the DH4 or the DE2. Those are the two locomotives that are compatible with it. So we're looking at, what was it again? D2I? Alright, we can do that. That's weird. Some weird rendering with the tunnel. What that's all about. So we're at 30 kilometers an hour. That should be more than enough. We got a DM3 here. That's pretty cool. The D2I is on the right, probably. Yep. So we're lined in now. Alright, and we should be able to bring it to a gradual stop here now. Just with the independent, I don't think we need to worry about the... Well, we'll put on a little train brake, just because, why not? Very cool. And that is the DH4, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you found it helpful and you can apply it to your own game. And once again, if you guys liked the video, make sure to like it, share it with your friends, because that does help me out a lot. Let's put this in here. And I might actually do a little bit of servicing for you guys, to show off the servicing a little bit. Now let's detach this. Alright. Get ourselves good here. And we will see what it costs to run this thing. Run this load. Now let's see if the wear and tear on the engine and the powertrains is actually a lot, or if it's actually not that much. I guess this will be kind of the moment of truth and see if running it in the red actually increases the cost or not, or if it's kind of just whatever to run it in the red. Now, I don't think there's any actual repercussions for running this thing in reverse, like how it is with traction motor failures with the diesel electric ones. If you run it in reverse, then it kind of blows up. I don't think there's any of those kind of repercussions with this one. I could be wrong, I just haven't seen any examples of it. Alright, I overshot a little bit. I always overshoot the area in here, though. Alright, so fuel cutoff switch, turn off the electrics, and apply the handbrake. Grab this, plug it into there, and we'll start refilling it here. And as you can see, it's actually not too bad. This is kind of generally the amount you pay for DH4 anyways, so that's pretty good. The emissions shouldn't be too bad. But that's the DH4, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Once again, I appreciate your guys' support. Like and share if you liked it. You know, consider subscribing as well. But that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya!